Thank you for attending the August 28th, 2023 meeting of the Westerville City Schools Board of Education. This evening's agenda will be displayed on the screens in the front of the room. Printed agendas are available for our guests, or you may find the agenda on your mobile device by connecting to the district's website at www.wcsoh.org. Click on the Our District link, select Board of Education, and then follow the board docs link to our current meeting agenda. There will be two opportunities to address the board this evening, the first being agenda item 6.01. The first set of comments is relative to agenda items 7.01 through 11.03. Please state the agenda items you are referencing at the beginning of your comments. The second opportunity is agenda item 12.01. There is a sign-up sheet located on the table in the back of the room. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board. A timer will be shown on the screen. And with that, Ms. Marshall, will you please call the roll call?
Mr. Bell?
Here.
Mrs. Altman?
Here.
Dr. Nesterbaker?
Here.
Mrs. Meyer?
Here.
Mrs. Davidson is absent.
And will you join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next, we have the Superintendent A+ Awards. Mr. Hershiser?
Thank you, Mrs. Meyer. I believe Reverend Bell and Dr. Nesterbaker, just Reverend Bell, are going to read the A+ award, and then when Reverend Bell is done, Mrs. Marshall is going to call her staff forward. Thank you.
Good evening. The Superintendent A+ Awards are presented to recognize excellence within the Westerville City School District. Many of the A+ awards that are presented are given to individuals, but this particular award is being presented to an entire team of employees. And Mr. Hershiser has noted that yes, our Treasurer's Office is regularly recognized by the state and most recently received their 11th consecutive Auditor of State Award with distinction for achieving clean audit results. In fact, they've even earned a 4-star rating for the highest achievement in open and transparent government every year since the system was established in 2019. But despite receiving such state accolades each year, what the team does behind the scenes each and every day is absolutely critical to our overall operational success. It's work that typically goes unnoticed, so I thought we should recognize the daily efforts of our Treasurer's Office staff members who, without much fanfare at all, keep things going on here in the district. I've had the opportunity to work closely with this team professionally for several years now. This year, I've even had a chance to work with several of them for personal reasons. Seeing the other side of this team has been a great experience and reaffirmed for me something I believed many people already know. Everyone in this department has been courteous, helpful, knowledgeable, professional, and willing to provide support at all times. Our employees sometimes reach out to the Treasurer's Office with some serious and complex issues, not really knowing who to call, where to turn, or what to do. When you talk about quality customer service, this team always responds promptly, professionally, with empathy, and with the employee's best interest at heart. I know there's a popular commercial slogan claiming that you're in good hands with a particular insurance company. Well, I have to tell you, you're in even better hands with this team of employees that are being honored here tonight. Thank you to Nicole and our Treasurer's Office staff for all that you do and especially for living up to our district's vision statement by being a true benchmark of educational excellence. So congratulations to the entire Treasurer's Office of the Westerville City School District. At this time, if board members, if you would come up front, Ms. Marshall will come and call the names of our honorees for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hershiser, for recognizing our office today. We have the best treasurer's office in the state of Ohio, as far as I'm concerned. First, I'd like to introduce Laura Hendricks. She is our assistant treasurer. If you want to come up, Laura, and shake hands, get your award, and make your own. Up next, we have Katharina Mead. She's our senior payroll coordinator. Christina Carney, our payroll associate, could not be with us this evening. And then we have Megan Kelly, our other payroll associate. Missy Hallett is our payroll and benefits associate. She also could not be with us this evening. And we have Adam Ibn Tomas, our benefits coordinator. And we have Gloria Stelzer, our accounting associate, very long time accounting associate. We'd be lost without her. And then Grace Lewis, our other accounting associate. And we have Leah Shilesi, she's our fiscal coordinator. And last but certainly not least, we have Meg Patton, our executive assistant in the treasurer's office.
Got one more. And we have one more for Ms. Marshall.
Excited. Thank you so much.
You want to do it?
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to get us all. I know. Some of the shorter people are.
Are we good? Just tell us to move, Charlie. However you want
There you go. Okay, ready? 3, 2. Thanks, Charlie. Thank you.
Wasn't that sweet?
Next up, we have 4.01 reports, and there are none. And then moving along to 5.01, approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting held on Monday, August 14th, 2023, as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Ms. Marshall?
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ottman?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. Moving along to 6.01, public comments, we have none. And so moving on to 7.01, approve the financial report and investments for June and July 2023. Ms. Marshall? Oh, yeah, thank you. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Would you like to?
Yes. Thank you, Vice President Meyer, members of the board. Today, we're going over both June and July, so we only had one board meeting in July, and we do financial reports at the second board meeting, so that's why we have 2 months in front of you tonight. For the month ending June, which was also the fiscal year end for 2023, we ended with year-to-date receipts of $214.2 million, year-to-date expenditures of $194.4 million, and this is for the general fund. And we ended with an unencumbered general fund balance of $175.5 million, and that's before any reserves or encumbrances. And then for year-to-date receipts for all funds, we had $298.7 million. For year-to-date expenditures, we had $315.4 million. And for unencumbered fund balances for all funds, we ended with $213.3 million. For the month ending July 31st, 2023, this is the first month of the fiscal year 2024. For the general fund, we had year-to-date receipts of $60 million, year-to-date expenditures of $14.6 million. We had an unencumbered fund balance for the general fund of $206 million. And for all funds, we had year-to-date receipts of $69.7 million, year-to-date expenditures of $24.8 million, and we ended with unencumbered fund balance for all funds at $238.4 million, and that's after the first month of the fiscal year.
Any questions or comments?
Just a comment, it's so nice to see the interest levels where they are after so many years when it was painful to look at the interest.
Yes, coming back up for sure.
That's for sure. Ms. Marshall, just real quick, you mentioned the end of the last fiscal year and the start of the new one, and I think it's probably pretty obvious for folks, but is there anything you want to call out that folks should understand about the end of one fiscal year and the beginning of a new one and what they're seeing here in terms of, like, you know, the month-to-date and the year-to-date receipts are going to be the same here, just so that folks can become a little familiar with what they're looking at?
So when we look at year-to-date and month-to-date, we are keeping track as we go throughout the month. So next month, you'll see monthly receipts, but then also year-to-date receipts. And that's what the financial report shows every month as we go throughout. So, you know, as the year goes on, our revenues will grow and our expenditures will also grow right along with that. And with cash flows and the way property tax settlement works and all that, it kind of ebbs and flows with when the receipts come in. We don't really have consistent revenue with property taxes, which is the majority of our revenue.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. 7.02, resolution to approve the purchases in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41 and Board Policy 6320. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Ms. Marshall, will you please explain?
Yes, thank you again. So these are what we call the in and out purchase orders. So this is where we have a purchase order that's dated after an invoice date. And we have 3 on the agenda for tonight. For AEP, this is due to Minerva France wasn't billed correctly, which resulted in an additional bill that we didn't have a purchase order in place for. We do have the budget, but we didn't have a purchase order that was enough to cover the additional bill. And that was a mistake on AEP's part. For School Links, the invoice is actually dated June 30th, but the contract term is July 1st through June 30th, so it's a day it crosses fiscal years. There was really no way to get a purchase order in place with how they dated the invoice because it comes out of the current fiscal year budget. And then for the EMIS link, the company had adjusted the contract term dates and dated the invoice much earlier than what was needed with the change in the contract term dates. And so that resulted in an in and out purchase order. But all were budgeted for, and so I do recommend its approval.
Great, thank you. Any questions, discussions?
Nope.
Okay.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. On the 8.8 personal consent agenda, is there any that we need to remove or take out, or can we take this all as one?
As
Okay.
one is fine.
Great. So may I have a motion to take 8.01 through 8.12 as one agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
Great. And welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Good evening, Vice President Meyer, members of the board, Ms. Marshall, Mr. Hershiser. This evening's personnel consent agenda includes action with regard to resignations, leaves of absence, contract status changes, changes of assignment, one-time pays, and employment decisions. Within the contract status changes, we have requested the board's approval for Jennifer Winters to move from a coordinator in our special education department to the coordinator of our EL department. We look forward to continuing to work with Jennifer in this capacity, given your approval this evening. And Jennifer is here this evening, so just want to say thank you and welcome. I also want to call out special appreciation to our staff and community members who coach and advise our students through many extra and co-curricular activities, as evidenced in the supplemental list before you this evening. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
I'll just ask real quickly, because I saw some drivers that are changing status to permanent drivers. How are we holding on bus drivers?
I believe the transportation department's holding on pretty well
Pretty
overall. And yeah, so compared to where we were this time last year, I think we're still in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, I was really excited to see all those transfers to permanent. So that was really exciting, and welcome, Jennifer. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. Moving along to old business, 9.01, final reading of policy 2114, meeting state performance indicators. Mr. Reeves. What's that?
Yeah, we can just take them all.
Huh?
Yeah, these are the second reading for policies,
Sorry.
so
Hey, it's my first time.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Gonna take them as a group.
yeah, we can,
Yeah.
Take them as a group.
Well, yeah, just
we haven't had
wing it.
feedback on these, so
Okay.
we haven't had any feedback on these, so
Okay.
we could take those as one.
Okay, great. Can I have a motion to take old business 9.01 through 9.06 as one agenda item?
So moved.
Second?
Any comments, questions, discussions? Great.
Ready? Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. New business, we have none. And 11, recommended action standing business, August 28th, 2023, 11.01, donations. May I have a motion to approve these amazing donations?
So moved.
Second?
And Ms. Yeah.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. 11.02, approval of the employee wellness plan for school year 2023 to 2024. Welcome, Ms. Patton. Oh,
So moved.
Second.
thank you. Welcome, Ms. Patton.
Good evening, Vice President Meyer, members of the board, Mr. Hershiser and Ms. Marshall. Thank you for allowing me to present the district's employee wellness plan. Before you is an overview of the programming available to our staff for this school year, where the district is utilizing our wellness funds from Anthem Insurance. These initiatives provide a broad range of opportunities for our staff to improve their physical and mental health. They're available at no cost to staff, and some opportunities have an, and some opportunities have an incentive offered for completion. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I'll just say they look really awesome. So thank you for offering this to our employees.
I really appreciate some of the incentives for annual physicals and stuff like that. Sometimes we adults are not as good as we are with our children in making things like that happen, so thanks for building that in.
Great. Yeah. Take the-
Dr. Nestor Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Mrs. Altman,
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer.
Yes. Next up, we have 11.03, early graduation. May I have a motion to approve the,
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Ms. Baldwin,
Good
welcome.
evening, Vice President Meyer, members of the board, Mr. Hershiser, and Mrs. Marshall. We have one candidate tonight from the class of 2024 who has completed their requirements, is looking forward to moving on to a post-secondary program. And so this is an opportunity to recommend her for graduation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Congratulations.
Yep,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes. Moving along to public comments, when we have none, so board comments, 13.01. Who would like to go?
This evening.
Well, I'll just say, we're starting to get to that time of the year when like the shiny newness is rubbing off. So I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that our faculty and staff, I mean, that includes everybody, food service, transportation, all of our teachers, all of our administrators, everybody are putting in, because I know that my kids are leaving home in the morning looking a little more tired than they did the first couple weeks. So thank you for taking all that on with nearly 15,000 of them.
Yes, I would echo that, and just congratulations to the treasurer's office, and also thank you to the IT department. I know they were putting in some long hours trying to get us up and ready to go, so I just really appreciate all the work that you guys did. And with that, going back to school also means our General Assembly went back to work. So I have a legislative update and some information about the changes that are happening at the Ohio Department of Education. And if you recall, the passage of House Bill 33 came several legislative changes that impact the Ohio Department of Education and State Board of Education. And during the first week of October, the Department of Education will be renamed the Department of Education and Workforce, and will become a cabinet-level agency reporting to the Governor of Ohio. Further, the legislation created a new agency, the Department of Children and Youth. The current powers and duties of the State Board of Education will be divided between the State Board of Education and Department of Education and Workforce. The members of the State Board and Department staff remain committed to student success and will continue to be available to support students, families, educators, schools, and districts, they state. But the State Board of Education will retain the following duties: hiring state superintendent of public institution to serve as executive officer of the state board, adopt requirements for educator licensure, process and ensure educator licenses, investigate and resolve educator misconduct complaints, evaluate background checks, and more, determine school district territory transfer disputes, administer the teacher and school counselor evaluation systems, oversee the Ohio Teacher of the Year program, and interface with and provide staff support to the Educator Standards Board. The Department of Education and Workforce, except for the duties and powers retained by the State Board, the department will be responsible for primary, secondary, special, and career technical education in Ohio. The Department of Education and Workforce will be led by a director who is appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. And then the new Department of Children and Youth was created July 1st of this year and will transfer some duties, functions, programs, and staff related to children and youth from the Departments of Education and Workforce, Job and Family Services, Health, Developmental Disabilities, Medicaid, Mental Health and Addiction Services, and Development. It's anticipated the programs and staff related to early learning and preschool special education currently within the Department of Education will be transferred to this department. And then there's some bills that were introduced dealing with homestead exemption. House Bill 60 is sponsored by Representative Daniel Troy. He's a Democrat from Willowick, and it would increase the amount of and expand the income qualifications for the homestead exemption, specifically for elderly or disabled homeowners and certain of their surviving spouses, and make certain of their surviving spouses that they will get what was $25,000 to $40,000 of the home's appraised value or cost. index the amount of that homestead exemption so that the exemption and resulting tax savings increase in proportion to inflation, and expand eligibility for that homestead expansion by raising the income threshold one may have to qualify for the exemption, currently $36,100, and modified Ohio adjusted gross income to $45,000. There's House Bill 90 that was sponsored by Representative Thomas Patton. He's a Republican from Strongsville, and it authorizes a total property tax exemption for the homesteads of totally disabled veterans and their surviving spouses by replacing the partial homestead exemption. And then House Bill 254 was sponsored by Representatives Tracy Richardson, a Republican from Marysville, and Adam Holmes, a Republican from Nashport, and it would expand the enhanced homestead exemption to 100% of a home's true value from the current cap of $50,000. Honorably discharged veterans who have a 100% disability rating will be eligible for this new exemption, and veterans with a disability rating of 70% or more would be eligible to exempt $10,000 of their home's true value and disability rating. And then lastly, Senate Bill 136, although there's a slew of bills that would impact education, is sponsored by Senator Craig, a Democrat from Columbus, and would reduce property taxes on qualifying owner-occupied homes and would name this act the Property Tax Relief and Local Government Support Act. So, starts the laundry list of all the bills that will impact education. But that's all. Just thank you, everyone, and congratulations again. And with that, the board will meet in regular session on Monday, September 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at the Early Learning Center, 936 East Wind Drive, Westerville, Ohio, 43081. Oh, do we need a motion?
Need a motion.
May I have a motion to close the meeting? Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Ready? Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Mrs. Meyer?
Yes.
Now we're adjourned.
Thank you. I appreciate the support.
6:27.